Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Kirk Krack. I'm the Human Performance Diver Lead at Deep Research Labs and Deep Research Incorporated. And I'm here today to talk about turning marine science fiction into marine science reality and how we intend to change the 21st century of marine exploration in a very significant way. And that's going to be done via subsea habitats. I am joined with some of my colleagues, Dr. Don Carnegas in the back, and Dr. Michael Lang, part of Deep, and you know, we're not doing easy things. We're doing very interesting things, and I want to take you through this, and we'll get into it. So about Deep in the first place. So Deep is a company that was formed in 2021. We are really working in the subsea products and operations, research testing, expeditions, human performance, media, and advanced manufacturing. And I'll touch on all of those things in a second. We have a founder who's given us a unique opportunity in which to really focus on return on purpose before return on investment. We are a business, but we measure that return on investment in decades, and we're really trying to give back. Our goal is to make humans aquatic, and we're going to do that through subsea habitats in trying to create a permanent human presence in the oceans. So we have engineering, manufacturing, expeditions, and the Deep Institute. So there's a lot of focuses that we're trying to do in this, and really what we're trying to do is enable the science. We do understand there's a partnership with industry. There'll be partnerships with department and ministries of defense and a number of things like that, but really we want to enable the science of the mesophotic zone, that 200 meters from depth to the surface where 97% of the ocean's biodensity and biodiversity lives, yet we know less than 20% of what lives there at this point. And so we are supported by a very growing and active network of different government organizations and institutions, and obviously a lot of experts and advisors, Dr. Michael Lang, and one of our most recent persons joining us is Dr. John Clark, the former lead scientist at the Naval Experimental Diving Unit, who has written 3 fiction books on habitats in the ocean. So we're really excited for him to join us as well. In November of 2001, the International Space Station went up with 6 people. And in that time, in that 25 years, we've had a permanent human presence in low Earth orbit. And the amount of science that gets done in low Earth orbit is actually quite staggering for the amount of people that are up there. And it's because they're up there constantly and we have that presence. And so what we are looking at doing, starting in 2026, we will establish the beginnings of a permanent human presence in the ocean, that largely by 2027 we will have achieved this. And that means that through a series of habitats around the world with our clients and partners, regardless of whether one is down for maintenance or a crew change, somewhere in the world we'll have a subsea habitat with aquanauts diving and interfacing with the environment, doing the science or whatever it is that needs to get done. And so we're very excited about that, because if you look at the Amazon as an example, and you were to say that all we know of the Amazon we learned because we helicoptered into it, we fast roped through the canopy floor, we spent 20 minutes there, then back up to the helicopter and back to base. That's kind of what we do in a scientific diving scenario, isn't it? We go out on the dive boat, we get our no decompression limit time, and then we go back to base. And if you're lucky enough to dive technical and in a rebreather, and you can go deeper longer, sure, but you are constrained by your time. So we're going to address that. We know all we know of the Amazon because we hike into it, we pitch a tent, and we live there for months on end. And that's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to gain access to the environment when you want to and not be constrained by the tether or the boat or anything on land. So what we're doing isn't new. There's a whole history. We are standing on the shoulders of giants, starting in Conch Shelf 1 in 62, all the way up to Aquarius Reef Base, the most recent one, which is no longer operating, and that was formed in 86, and it's been in the Florida Keys. There have been other camper van style habitats where a person could do an overnight in shallow depths, but we're talking about into the full of the mesophotic zone. Mesophotic meaning the deepest light reaches and actually has a function on the environment around it, right? And so we're going to do that with the Vanguard, and we're going to do that with the Sentinel. We're going to offer time, we're going to offer space, labs, and mission configuration. That is the idea behind that. So why do we want to do this is really the question. Well, I mean, we need to understand climate change better, because that is affecting biodiversity. We're losing species faster than any time in Earth's history since the extinction of the dinosaurs 60-some million years ago. The background extinction rate is out of whack, right? Species evolve and species go extinct all the time, but right now that is completely out of whack. And we risk a biodiversity density loss in the oceans. And so there's science and scientific research and healthcare, and there's the idea of bioprospecting. The Ocean Census Program, again, wants to discover 100,000 new species in the next 10 years that we don't know exist in the oceans. Remember, 97% of the biodensity diversity of the oceans lives in that 200 meters. The vast majority of the Earth's resource of protein comes from the sea. 1 out of every 2 breaths you're taking right now, you owe to that depth of the ocean. Our next cures for cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, antibiotics will be a protein or some chemical composition that comes from that zone that we don't even know exists right now. So we need to access it en masse when we need to, and that's where our real focus is. And as well, we get to plan for space exploration, because the International Space Station, or a simulation of it, nothing replicates the stressors that we measure via cortisol, as the NEMO missions that Dr. Carnegie did as an astronaut candidate, where 2 weeks she lived in Aquarius Reef Base, where you get to go outside the habitat and play in microgravity and so on. So that's the idea. So again, you know, our current methodologies, back in the day, what did we do? We sailed out into the ocean, we threw a net down, and we put everything on the deck of the boat, and we sifted through it. Okay, well nowadays we're more advanced than that. We have vessels of opportunity that allow us to do that. Some of these are $100,000 a day. We use submersibles, but this is the interesting thing about that 200-meter zone. We're actually pretty good in the 30-meter zone, that 100-foot zone, in which to do scientific diving, constrained by bottom times. But then we get into a submersible and we go straight to 500 meters, 15 feet and deeper. So from that 100-foot to that 666-foot, that 30-meter to that 200-meter zone, we tend to like blow right past it and go straight deep. So there's this opportunity in that area that it's full, it's rich for discovery. Now, ROVs and UAVs do it, but that's discovering via a screen and a Xbox controller, right? And then we do diving, okay? But we are constrained within diving. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to take the best of technical diving and the best of commercial or saturation diving and blend it into a way of accessing the ocean en masse when we need it. So one of the things that's supporting us, and one of the first investments we made, is in Chepstow, England, in a quarry, this quarry here, 600 meters long, 100 meters wide, 80 meters deep. We have 55 acres of land, and this is a high-performance facility for us, a diving high-performance facility where we will do a lot of training. So that's one of our European bases, because we formed in the UK. We are now in the US as as well. And you can see Subs Island right there, where we have that island that exists. That's not a rendering of two Triton 3K3s, 1,000-meter submersibles. One of those is now in Florida. We have a manufacturing arm of our company. When we looked at making the pressure hulls for our habitats, we realized that the Ministries of Defense have we were going to be on a 10-year waiting list to make the hulls we need. So we decided to go in and research advanced manufacturing. Basically, the idea of 3D printing metal via WAM, wire arc additive manufacturing. And so we made significant investment in that, and that recently paid off this year by being the first company in the world to get DNV, like American Bureau of Shipping, to get classed and certified to make pressure vessels for the marine environment for human occupancy. So we would have the ability to 3D print a metal pressure vessel, be it a hyperbaric chamber, a submersible hull, or a habitat hull. And we've just stood up a manufacturing facility in Houston now around that. And this is our North Star. This is our guiding principle of what we call the Sentinel system, a modular, redeployable, reconfigurable habitat. That is a very big guiding principle for us to get to. But to get to that along the way, we need to make the steps to get there. And so just to give you an idea about Sentinel, we plan on seeing depths of 200 meters, 21 atmospheres, again, that mesophotic zone. That's also a zone we know how to dive in actually quite well. We've done that from the oil and gas industry, saturation diving industry, quite a bit. Each one of those modules or compartments that you see there would have 6 people. You're talking 28-day capacity, although that was an old legislation for saturation diving. There's no reason why once you're saturated, 28 days or 28 years, there's nothing stopping you. That decompression is still the same at the end. And just to put it into context, give you some idea, every 100 feet you're at is about a day of decompressing out of that saturation. We're well over 200,000 engineering hours into this, and everything we do is with DNV approval. It's the platinum standard of third-party engineering looking at our engineering and how we're going about it. And so if we take a walk inside of a Sentinel, we see that there's 2 floors to it. The first thing we're looking at here is the great room, just simply a meeting room. There's a stairway that goes down to the galley. If we go up the stairway, we go to the multi-purpose room. Basically think of this as a lab space. Obviously lots of portholes, windows. And those become areas where we have through hulls to hyperbaric lifeboats, or allows us passages into the next module. This is what your stateroom would look like, and from your stateroom, a unique thing in habitats would be this thing right here, would be an actual head and a shower. Instead of having to go outside the habitat into a little air bubble, fending off the yellowtail snapper as you're doing your business, right? So that would be a unique thing. And then we have the dive lab with the elevator that would take us down. So this is where we're working towards, but we have to get there eventually. So this is what I kind of presented on last year. So what's new, right? A year later, what's new since DEMA 2024? Well, first off, we stood up Deep Research Incorporated. So we have our U.S. offices serving the Americas in Miami, Florida. We're now standing up and developing Deep Station Florida. Deep Station, Florida, which is our forward operating basis, which is going to support the operations of our Vanguard habitat. And Deep Station, Florida is for the Vanguard habitat. It's a training platform where we'll do environmental sciences, coral bottom trawling restoration. In fact, part of our permit in the NOAA Marine Sanctuaries will be to do coral restoration and bottom trawling analogs. We will have a reef that we need to go and tend that garden weekly. Human performance sciences, equipment sciences, and space analogs. And then there's also going to be a home port for FLIP. And I'll talk about flip ship at the end. So this is Vanguard. This kind of is what it looks like. The pressure vessel is right here, and then the dive lockers there, and this platform here is in support of it. So we'll be on a reef in 60 feet of water. The storage depth where the moon pool's at is going to be at about 50 feet. And this expansion slot allows us in a year's time to put a secondary ambient-only habitat. It won't be a pressure vessel. It'll be ambient only, but it'll allow us to extend our occupancy from 4 to 8 people total. And that's how you would access the diving side of the habitat via that moon pool. And just to take you on a little internal tour, there's the moon pool. You're in the dive locker where all your dive controls, umbilicals, lots of ways to dive via hard hat, umbilical, rebreather, standard scuba, doubles better, a little bit more constrained. We're in the multi-purpose room. This is lab space. There's a head in here. And then we move from there into the living quarters. And so this is for 4 people for 5-day mission. So it's going to work this way. The dive boat will pull up Monday morning. You'll dive in. You'll go for a beautiful dive on the reef. You'll finish that dive inside the habitat. Monday through Thursday, you're going to eat, sleep, dive from the habitat. And then Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, we're going to close the pressure door. We're going to decompress to the surface while you sleep at night. You're going to wake up Friday morning on the surface, pressure-wise, habitat's still at depth, still at 50 feet, but you'll be pressurized, and now you'll be back on the surface, decompressed. A quick medical check, everyone's good. We pressurize back down. You do one last dive, but that dive ends on the surface beside the boat. A transfer under pressure is how we refer to that. So I have spent many rainy weekends in a camper van with 3 other people with much less space than that. So I'm actually looking forward to it. So yeah, this just gives you an idea. There's the moon pool, the dive locker, the multi-purpose room, and then we get into the sleeping quarters. Yeah, so it's at a depth of 60 feet, moon pool at 50, and again, we can dive via traditional scuba, more likely doubles. We are a little bit constrained because you are diving in an overhead environment. It's a saturation dive. You have a decompression ceiling, right? You need to do 16 hours of decompression to get out of that saturation. Or we can do umbilical and rebreathers. And so that's what it'll look like. We're on a very beautiful reef, lots of different reef sciences happening. And in fact, 200 meters away from us, we can get into the 30 to 35 meter or 100 to 115 feet of depth. And supporting this would be a submersible around us, and we'd have all sorts of fun doing what we need to do there. So again, this is a training platform for us, but it is a lab for rent, right? It's a lab space for rent for whatever needs to be done. And again, those things are the training platform, restorations, environmental, human performance sciences, and equipment testing, as well as space analog. So we're really excited about our current works with different space agencies and what they want to do with us. So one of the things that supports us, I mean, I've showed you the habitat, that's hardware, right? But ultimately the pinkware, the software, the human in the thing is what makes this thing happen. In the current world of oceanography and diving, everything is about autonomy. It's about ROVs and AUVs and all these sorts of things. We are trying to keep the human in the loop. We have a very unique skill set that nothing else can do, and that is the dexterity of these manipulators, your eyes, and your spatial awareness and the decision you want to make at that point. So we really want to work on the idea of human-machine teaming. Get the 100% both of both worlds. The autonomy of machines, the ROV driven of machines, and the human being there at the same time. So the Deep Institute is our way in which to train people for the future of diving. And we will do this through our subject matter experts in habitat diving operations, submersibles, and mission success. Our goal will be this. At some point, if you're a marine researcher who doesn't want to leave it to someone else, you want to be there doing it. As long as you're medically fit, You can do the water person assessment. We can train you over the course of time in which to make you a mission specialist, much like NASA would take about 2 years to train you to be a mission specialist going to the International Space Station. In the course of our training, we could actually have you ultimate capacity of 200 meters with a rebreather in saturation and accessing the environment. Or you might simply be the lab person who never dives, but you process the labs. And this is the unique thing that the habitat offers, is that if I snip a Gorgonian coral, and I need to sequence and figure out its protein structure, and then I bring it to the surface from 200 meters, I denature it, I decompress it. It's a different chemical composition by the time I get it to the surface, let alone the time in which to get it to the lab. If I can snip it, hand it up through the moon pool to someone 2 minutes later, and they can immediately, at depth, at pressure, start that. That is a higher quality of science, and that's what we're trying to do. So one of the things we're working on in the immediate, because within a year's time we will have our second habitat in the 100-meter range, is working on a CCR scientific habitat saturation program. So if you are a 60-meter CCR diver and you want to get qualified and ready to dive at 100 meters in a habitat, then we have a path for you, and that is first off learning closed circuit rebreather saturation. So we are developing the world's really first commercially available saturation rebreather. We're doing this in partnership with JJ. It's a rebreather they have available, but how do you calibrate in a 2% oxygen environment for your dive, your oxygen sensors? Helium as a molecule loves to get into everything, so it's different potting solutions and all of the things to make this thing capable and CCR of living in that environment, calibrating and diving. So that's what we're looking at there. Then we have a scientific saturation diving program. Saturation diving has typically been the realm of the commercial diver in the oil and gas industry or military. And what we're changing that paradigm. We are now offering that up to the scientific community. And then we have the habitat diving programs. So all of this is going to be done at our saturation training facility in Chepstow. This past year, our saturation facility was refurbished and recertified by DNV for another 20 years. We've just pulled the trigger on the investment and developing this whole support facility that will be at the 80-meter depth zone in our quarry in the UK. And we will be able to train 6 to 9 people through a 2-week saturation course with all of the necessary things you would have available to you. Now, typically that would have meant you've been a commercial diver level 1 through 4. You'd have learned underwater welding, and you'd eventually been in a 50-meter mixed gas diver, and then a 100-meter. And then you would have had to then go to the North Sea, do 100 dives on a wellhead, doing 100 hours, to then be able to then go and do a saturation program. If you're a marine scientist, you're not going to go through all of that. You're not going to spend that money and go through all of that months and years of training to eventually become a sat diver. So we've created a parallel path in which the scientific community, starting within the recreational programs as we know them now, moving through technical to gain all of the levels of capability and experience that would be needed to be able to do saturation diving with bell transfers and using rebreathers. And so that's what we're looking at doing. So we're very excited about this. This is proving kind of our commitment to the community and the mission and our vision of what we're doing. And, but we're not stopping there with the saturation facility or Deep Station Florida or Vanguard habitat. We're actually looking at, for lack of a better name, let's call it Vanguard 2.0, a next generation habitat, highly redeployable. Think of 4 shipping containers, easily flight shipped, deployed, expanded crew size and capabilities, weeks-long saturation capabilities, depths, and bottom terrain access versus having to have have a nice level flat plane. So that's the next thing that we're working on. We would expect this within the next 18 to 24 months to be launched. Again, we still have the expansion slot on Vanguard that will open that up to within the next year. So we're moving at a quick pace. We're moving at a calculated pace, right? We hold ourselves to some of the highest standards in engineering and everything we do, operations, etc. So, you know, one of the things that we did to really prove to the scientific community and the community, oceaneering community at large, that we were committed to everything was the flip ship. So if you know, in 1963, the Office of Naval Research built this ship to be a spar buoy. It would flood, go 90 degrees, and regardless of what the waves were doing, it remained stable. So it was very much a very useful scientific instrument in the community. 2 years ago, it was decommissioned, and it was sent to a Mexican yard to be scrapped and cut up, and we bought it. It's currently in a yard in Marseille. We're refurbishing it, new propulsion, new generation, autonomy, sensors, the whole package. And we will be reintroducing it back to the scientific community. We hope at a minimum it will wash its face. It's right, that it'll break even. But what we did realize is that when it was decommissioned at whole, the scientific community realized there was a lot of undone science. And so we thought it worthy to give Flip a second chance at life to continue to serve the scientific community. And so we will see in 2027 Flip Ship come back to the scientific community and to continue to do good science.
That's the one in St. Pete?
Yeah, that's probably the likely home. Yeah, it was run out of scripts in San Diego for most of the time. So that's a little bit about DEEP and what we're doing. And one thing I want to let you know about is, you know, by 2027 with Vanguard and our Deep Station Florida, our forward operating base, we anticipate to be actually quite busy with science and labs and, you know, military research and a number of things like that, that access for the community, the recreational technical community, would be pretty limited. So one of the things we are looking at this year is an experience program in which to allow people access to what we're doing there. And we're running this 5-day program. We're designing it right now. In fact, you know, Don and I and Michael were kind of joking about this because, you know, this came down this week. So as I'm telling you, you're probably, you know, the 100 people that know about this at this point. But in 26, we're going to be offering an introduction to Aquanaut training program, a 5-day program where you'll get to go to Deep Station, Florida. And you'll get to have an introduction or mod 1 of a course of hyperbarics. You'll get to do a run in the hyperbaric chamber. You'll get to go to a narcotic depth and experience the chamber and what happens there. We'll take you through an introduction to helmet and umbilical diving. You'll do an introduction to submersibles. You'll dive in the submersible and you'll dive outside with the submersible in human-machine teaming. And you'll have multiple dives in and around and inside the habitat over that 5 days. Basically a very toy-rich experience in which to do a lot of kind of cool operations, all in service of science and our restoration projects. And that'll be something that we'll be opening up for some of our partners to help launch with us. So we're excited about that program. So that's DEEP, that's our vision, our mission, what we're doing. It's not conceptual design art, we're actually doing it. And again, Vanguard gets deployed this January, and our first missions, our first kind of dives happening in February, and Dawn will be doing our first full 5-day saturation mission this April. So we're excited about that. So thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
I'm not 18 anymore.
Okay, yeah. Neither am I. Neither is Dawn.
Right. And I'm further away than he is.
Okay. Yeah.
The expectation that people in this room would be eligible based on the stresses, right?
It's
Part of my first question.
Listen, I'm really glad you brought this up, because one of the things that's really important to us as a company, saturation diving, as we know it, military and oil and gas, has been the realm of military and oil and gas, young divers, right? The diversity of the research around those people has focused in that very narrow area. Our goal as a company is we want to be very inclusive of the demographic of the people who can use this. We're talking about researchers. We're not talking about throwaway military or oil and gas, right? There's a component, oil and gas industry right now, if you're working saturation, you're making $2,000 a day in sat. But that's an industry environment. I mean, that's rough, right? You're sitting there on the toilet doing your business and your buddy's got a towel up eating their dinner, but you don't mind. You're making $2,000 a day, right? That's not going to fly in the scientific community. So we do understand that we are building this out for a bigger age range, women as well, obviously. I mean, in all that scientific saturation research, that was men largely. And so that's what we're opening it up to. So it comes down to this, is that if you look at Deep Station Florida, that's a very accessible component. As long as you fit your diving medical, right? And as long as you've got the skills and the capability and all of that stuff there, that's a very accessible thing. When we get into the saturation component as well, that is, again, just, it's based on your medical and your physical components and things like that. But I plan to be there. Dawn's going to be there. I mean, it's going to open up, and that's going to be the thing.
What is the impact of these things going to be on Florida's reefs?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So one of the things about it is we realize that we're going to have an impact, right? There's going to be a footprint. The idea is that our overall positive impact will be minimized by that footprint. So we're very cognizant of our footprint. So much so that a couple of things, for example, our gray water and black water, where that was traditionally just the current will deal with it. We're doing this to bladders. So all that stuff will come up in a bladder to the boat, get reprocessed. Another thing of significance would be, for example, light pollution. At night, your portholes and all the lights draws the fish in. So we have shading. We basically put the curtains up and we minimize and drop the lights such that we are trying to minimize that impact. However, because of the research and the products that we are doing to really help the reefs and understand coral restoration, and that is a huge focus of our company, and in fact, some of our philanthropic arm is really focused on restoration projects. If you look at typical coral restoration, it is done in the shallow recreational zone. Mostly it's the snorkel zone is what people are looking at, when in fact, corals go as deep as 200 meters and deeper. And so we want to also bridge that space where it isn't being addressed, and we can be the people that do that. So there's an idea of being able to create an army of restoration specialists that we can all help with. The specialized restoration specialists who are technical divers who would be able to go through the training to live in a habitat and do whatever capacity. That's kind of the next generation and next level of it. So overall, our goal is to create a positive impact and minimize that footprint so that the net benefit is to us.
Are you assessing sound pollution as well?
All of it. Yeah. Thank you. Those are great questions. Thank you. Yeah.
So with the Vanguard habitats, day to day, how much of that is accommodated for with surface supplies like air, power?
Yeah, great question.
How do you support that when you have a week, a 3-day decompression opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. What you didn't see in the graphics, you didn't see the umbilical that goes to the surface to our surface support station. And that's where we have energy, that's where we have generators, and that's where we can create the compressors and the energy supply, communications equipment, and all that sort of thing. All the habitats, Vanguard, by DNV regulation, we have 72 hours of life support. On the bottom. Yeah, we have an autonomy to that. So if for whatever that support station got taken out by some errant tanker that ran over it at depth, we can, okay, now we're bailing out, we're going into emergency decompression, close the hatches. We have 3 mission cycles of decompression worth just in our own autonomy of that 72 hours. Yeah. Yeah, there's a galley. There is. No, that's a good. No, good point. It's actually in the main living area. Yeah, and good question. We're going to do sous vide. So we're going to make your meals in a bag. It's going to be based on your preferences, your allergies, your caloric requirement, because you're a working diver in the environment. The fact that sunlight isn't going to be readily available, so your macronutrients, any religious aspects around your meals, and you will simply pick your meal and heat it up in a bag and eat. Yeah.
So day-to-day wouldn't be that much different than like a sat diver deals with as far as food and all that being provided.
absolutely.
I got a little engineering question. Communications is going to be wired, UQC. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, I mean, all of it. Everything is open there. One of the cool things is you'll be in your bunk FaceTiming family, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to have fiber running down to it?
100%, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, our goal is to be in SAT missions talking with Mrs. Smith's grade 5 class in Ohio somewhere, because we want to inspire. Like, this is a long term. We're set up as a 200-year company. We plan to make a difference and move the needle. And the amazing thing is our founder has given us that ability in which to have generational financing. So we're very lucky, and we understand the privilege that has been given to us. Yeah.
When you go with helium, that's going to be really funny for you.
Well, so that's a really good question. We're at 15 meters, 50 feet in this reef simply because we can do an air environment. And we're limited Monday to Friday so that we are controlling whole body oxygen toxicity. Certainly any longer, any deeper, than we would start. Yeah, helium is not cheap, although it should come down in price over the next couple of years, just basically some facilities that are coming online, right? Yeah.
Need an educator to participate?
We need everything. Any other questions?
Yes.
Dawn, please jump in and maybe some of the science things and things like that.
I think the question came up about saturation diving and the human and the habitat, right? There's a long history of saturation diving research and looking at how that impacts the body, but a lot of that research was done, decades ago. And so, I mean, the heavy pieces of it. So we're really excited about being able to, revisit that, continue that research, kind of build on the legacy of what's already been done. We are building out a longitudinal health survey for individuals who participate in our missions. They can opt in. Obviously, we have to have them consent in. But we're collecting information on those individuals before a mission, during a mission, after a mission, and even collecting biological samples for molecular testing, for example, and being able to bank those for things that we find downstream that are interesting. So we're really excited about being able to kind of build out those data sets with a more comprehensive and kind of expanded population of individuals as we're running these missions.
You had a question about the lifespan of it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think from a DNV point of view, we maintain it. We've got 20 years, right, on it. Probably our biggest thing is going to be keeping life from growing on it. And that's going to be an ongoing weekly, daily type thing that I think, the last habitat that's down there right now has become such a reef that it's impossible and unable to be removed. Just simply, it is overgrown. And so, that'll be an interesting component we have to deal with. Not to say that there won't be new system upgrades and all the things moving on, but the pressure vessel itself will be, upwards of 20 years, I think, is the operation.
What's that? Are those units modular? Can you take out one in the event it fails and put in another?
All the internal stuff, yeah, absolutely. And the dive locker, the dive the dive room is separate of the pressure vessel. So it's actually an ambient only versus the pressure vessel. Yeah. Any other questions?
Me again.
Yeah.
In the presentation, you made, excuse me, references several times to developing analogs for deep space exploration.
Yeah.
What do you expect your areas of focus would be on that and anticipated timelines?
Yeah, so I think that's going to be driven by the community itself, what they expect. What we have is the platform in which for them to use as needed, right? So there's the training aspect of having to learn life-saving skills in a environment where there are life-saving products, and then doing the work within it. The interesting thing about, current analogs, some geodesic dome in the desert where you put your Skidoo suit on and your bike helmet and you get in the golf cart and you go pretend you're on Mars. At any time you don't like it and you're like, I'm out of here. You just walk out the door. Here, you've got a ceiling. You've got 16 hours of decompression that needs to go through. So what the comparison of the cortisol stress hormone is almost equivalent to what the astronauts are experiencing in the ISS. So it is the closest thing that we can have. Okay, thank you.